Hi, hello, and welcome, or welcome back, I suppose. First note, I probably sound a bit grim. I've got some kind of lurgy going on. Second note, attached to the first, given I have been sick, I have to say that my opinions on the first, I would say third of this novel, are under the veil of me having been dealing with this lurgy. I can't be sure if my mild difficulty settling into this novel is a writing thing, or an I was ill and kind of foggy kind of thing. But that aside, let's get on to the actual review and talk about Welcome to the Hyunam-Dong Bookshop by Hwang-Bo-Rum, translated by Shana Tan. Some spoilers ahead. This book follows a cast of characters, primarily Young-Ju as she leaves the 9-to-5 corporate world and opens up a bookshop. She isn't sure how well this endeavour will go, but with the help of those around her, she becomes more and more passionate about keeping the place open. We also have Minjun, who works as a barista at the bookshop. He spent much of his life up to being hired there, trying to get to where society expects him to be. He worked hard at his education, but when that was over, he couldn't get himself on the corporate ladder properly. Throughout, he learns to open himself up and to follow his passion. He gains a love for the entire process of coffee making, forming a kinship with the woman who roasts the beans for the shop, Jimmy. She is also a good friend of Young-Ju's as well. There's a whole host of other people, but I would say that these two are our leads, with everyone else's stories progressing around these two. And I will say, I found it refreshing that these two weren't turned into a romantic partnership. Their dynamic remains sort of professional and platonic, and I really do appreciate that. I think it would have been very easy to turn them into the romantic leads, but I'm glad that isn't where it ended up. And like I said in my intro, I had a bit of a mixed time getting into this book. While the easygoing style of the writing was something I found quite comforting and cozy, there's a kind of snapshot vibe to a fair amount of the early part of this book that I was struggling with a little bit. I would say it took me about 70 to 100 pages to be really eased into things, but that isn't to say I wasn't enjoying it. It felt like a good partner to distract me from the fact that I was feeling, achy and gross and just bleh. And I think part of it is that short snapshot chapter style that we get in the early going. We get glimpses of the characters we're being introduced to, but it doesn't feel like we're really getting to know them too well. And I know that's obviously, you're never really going to get to know characters super early on, but it feels like we're just getting these little bits. It feels like we're getting glimpses of them instead. However, we did eventually get to longer, more substantial stuff, and by that time I was already bought into things. So, while not my favourite, I wasn't actively disliking it. Plus, when I got to the end and read the author's note where she talks about the process of bringing this book to life, a lot of the early parts of this novel made a lot of sense. I began to write. Everything else fell into place as the novel progressed. Whenever a new character stepped in, I gave them a name and fleshed out their personality. If I had no idea what came next, I'd get the new character to chat with the older ones, and somehow they seemed to guide the story and the next scene would come naturally to me. And as well, I think these early chapters do lack a little bit of subtlety when it comes to the sort of messaging of the book. A big theme of it is having a work-life balance and not letting your job kill you. Your passions are important and you need to live your life rather than the one expected of you. This becomes a little less in your face as the book goes on, even if it is still very clearly the kind of moral of the story, as it were. It's very overt in the early goings of the book, and at times I was a bit like, no, I get it, don't worry, but it felt a lot less like that as I went on with it. I think the best way to put it is that it felt like Hwang-Bo-Rum found her footing a little before that 1/3 mark, and when that happened, I was able to find myself locked in. Now, I am aware that I might look at it a little differently were I reading it entirely healthy, not sick, but it could be a case of my focus being off, but I am going to stand by what my thoughts and feelings were in the moment. That is how I review stuff most of the time. It is a kind of in the moment thoughts and feelings. Unless I'm doing a super deep dive, then sometimes things do slightly change. But the thing is, even if the writing itself took a little bit of easing into, the characters were darling to me right from the off. I have said it a million times, but I will say it again. I adore character-driven narratives, and this ticks all the right boxes for me. The way new characters are eased into the group and enrich everything is just exactly what I look for in a comforting read like this. It's about empowering and helping each other and finding people that you can open up to and be yourself around. The way we get to see Youngju blossom through this book brings a huge smile to my lips and a tear to my eye, frankly. She finds that she can live the life she set out to build for herself when she opened the bookshop. It isn't just a case of sort of passively keeping it afloat, it's about wanting it, and by proxy herself, to flourish. And we see Minjun go from being closed off to everyone, feeling like a failure, to realising that he can make his own future. It doesn't have to be the one set out for him by society, where he becomes a high-rolling company man. He loves the little life he's made for himself as a bookshop barista and develops such a passion for the whole process of coffee making, and it goes from like the location of the beans to the roast and the method of the brewing. The whole thing just becomes so beautiful to him. And it might not be what's expected of him, but that isn't the point. His life becomes his own, and in doing so he even manages to help others in realising their own potential. As I said earlier, he forms a kinship with Jimmy, the owner of Goat Beans, the supplier for the bookshop, and she spends much of her time complaining about her husband, not even realising she's doing it. It just becomes part of the way she speaks. And as the two of them get to know each other, they both find themselves able to open up. And he sort of subtly tries to tell her that maybe she should take a look at her situation and figure out if it's actually the right one for her. And boy, when she comes into the shop and tells Minjun and Youngju that she's getting a divorce, I was like, let's go! I was just like, yes, come on, because it's what she deserves. And I think that is just testament to how well the characters are written here. Be it our leads or the side characters, everyone gets their moment, and it's so easy to get attached to all of them. There's, I can't remember her name off the top of my head. I think it's Yongshu. It's a similar name to our lead, but not quite. She has this steady progress of, she spent some time away from corporate life in order to be able to look after herself, and she goes back into it by the end, but it's very clear that she knows how to stand up for herself now. She knows how to take time for herself, meditate on things. It's just, it's beautiful. And something I'll say as well, when it comes to the character dynamics, I like that we get a good amount of friendships that aren't turned romantic just because one's a man and one's a woman. I mentioned it earlier with Minjun and Youngju, but it also applies to his relationship with Jimmy as well. He doesn't lead her towards getting a divorce because he has hidden feelings for her. It's simply because he cares about her as a friend. In cozy, character-driven narratives, we all too often see authors feel the need to push every character into a relationship. I don't know if that's like slightly more of a Western thing. Yeah, this is a Korean book, but I can't comment on that really. I don't have a huge range to be able to I don't have, like if you're doing a study, you need a huge range to be able to actually properly talk about that. I can't really, but I like that people are just allowed to be friends here. Like, there is a romance story, which we'll talk about in just a moment, but it isn't made out to be the most important type of relationship. Forming friendships is deeply important, and in fiction, this is all too often pushed to the side for the sake of a romance plot. God forbid people be platonic, and Hwangbo Room has got my back, because I just love how important these friendships are. And in order to keep eyes on the bookshop, Youngju runs book talks with authors, one of these being Sung-woo. He writes about grammar and linguistics on a blog, and with his debut novel, he focuses on how you can improve as a writer. He and Youngju both find that they want to find who the person is that lies between the person they show in the flesh and the one that appears in their writing, with Youngju writing a blog about the bookshop and in general about books. And oh my god, do I now sympathise with the K-drama girlies that I've seen online who were like, I've waited 3 seasons and the romantic leads have just held hands, because Jesus Christ, this is Slow burn doesn't even cover it. To be clear, I loved every second of it, but I was scratching at my walls like a caged animal, just being like, come on, you two are perfect for each other. And I love the way he speaks her language when he's trying to express his feelings for her. Like, while he can't really use his own words, he brings her a book and goes, this, it's like this, and oh, I'm lying on my tummy, I'm kicking my feet, because that's exactly how she communicates with people. I was like, ah! Now, if you're expecting anything more than a deep sense of yearning and the vaguest of confirmations that something seems to be going on with them at the end, then I am so sorry. But I love what they have, and it feels clear to me that after what we see in the novel, the Youngju has set aside her fears and allowed herself to be happy with Sungwoo. And yeah, while it did take me a little bit of time to get into this book, I adored it in the end, and if Wangbo Room publishes more like this, then I'll definitely be on the lookout for it. I'm actually going to be passing my copy on to my friend for Christmas because it seems right up her alley. But if I didn't have other books to fill the niche, I probably would keep it to be something to read over and over when I need something a little warm and comfy. But thankfully I do have plenty in that wheelhouse. Next week though, I am stepping into something completely different with Ghost Ship by Kate Moss. Very curious to see what that has in store for me. I sort of picked it up on a bit of a whim because it seemed vaguely interesting, and I am finally getting onto that. That was a few months ago I picked that up. Let me know your favourite comfy cozy reads down in the comments though. I am always looking for the sort of thing that makes me feel like I'm being wrapped in a big cozy blanket. And to keep up with what I'm doing, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe, and feel free to ring that notification bell, all the cringe shit I'm supposed to ask you to do in my videos. But most importantly, I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, a wonderful whenever you are watching this. Take good care of yourself. Right,